Hello, everybody. Dan DeFedericis from Saratoga Report, and I'm here with somebody that's going to be a new face to a lot of you. Jim Gazzale, wears two hats in the thoroughbred racing industry. He is the lead writer for Legal Sports Report. That's an online publication about the legal betting industry, including but not limited to horse racing. And 10 years ago, there wasn't much legal betting beyond horse racing, right? But that's different today. He also wears a very different hat. He's the videographer for Pastthewire.com. Pastthewire is a great horse racing publication. I check it daily for information for Saratoga Report, and they certainly have plenty of NYRA-based news on that. Jim, how are you doing? You live here just outside of Saratoga Springs, so you're experiencing that same cold, blustery, windy weather that I did this morning, and youch.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck is going on, but maybe we can try and get back to that mid 60s that we had a couple of weeks ago. That was pretty nice.
Yeah. For those of you watching that don't live upstate, we've had March was just a reverse. We've had the whole winter here has been pretty mild, actually, probably the warmest on record or darn close to it. And the first half of March was just almost wonderful. And winter, even though it's technically spring already, winter is letting us know it hasn't completely gone away yet. We had a dusting of snow today, and it's just cold. The wind chill is just much colder than the real temperature. That's what's getting us. But anyway, hey, some exciting things happening. Yesterday, NYRA President and CEO David O'Rourke was in town at Universal Preservation Hall for a Chamber of Commerce breakfast, and he had a number of things to say. Probably the most important was what we all sort of knew already anyway, but it had yet to be confirmed until yesterday morning, and that was, Jim, that the Belmont Stakes is here in Saratoga, not only for 2024, but confirmed pending state approval, but that will be likely for 2025. What are your thoughts on that? What do you know about that?
Yeah, it's like you said. I think we all kind of in the back of our minds knew that this was going to be happening. The Belmont at Saratoga in both 24 and 25. My wife mentioned this to me last night, and I jokingly said, "Well, what were they going to do? Host it at Aqueduct?" And I love Aqueduct and visit there often, but in the summer, it's June. The weather is nicer up here. The track is nicer up here. The economic impact is larger up here when you bring an event like that. And of course, the NYRA officials love to tout that. So yeah, not surprising. I feel like you said, we all knew that this was going to be the case, and they essentially confirmed and made it official yesterday morning. And we'll see. I'm excited for the Belmont to be up here in June. I think it's going to be an awesome long weekend, an awesome week. I was on Broadway a couple of weeks ago, and just popping into different stores and asking the owners or at least the workers of the stores along Broadway just if they were excited about it. And surprisingly, a few of them said that they're just kind of shrugged their shoulders and weren't necessarily thrilled about it. But I don't know. I don't share that opinion. I feel like it's going to be super exciting. I can't wait for it. And, just from the racing aspect and, anytime that they can have live racing at Saratoga, I'm going to be there.
Yeah. When I moved to Saratoga 17 years ago, 18 years ago now, it was a bit of a shock to me at first to find out that not every last person in Saratoga Spring loves horse racing. And it's a sizable number. Some are okay with it, but they're just not fans. They go there when out-of-town guests want to come there, kind of like I grew up just outside of Buffalo, so we'd only go to Niagara Falls when out-of-town guests came, and sort of the same thing with them. Some are against horse racing, so it's a bigger number than people realize. Obviously, a lot of horse racing fans in Saratoga, but it's just not unanimous. And so I'm not shocked you got sort of with some people, a shrug of the shoulders. What's got me thinking about Saratoga is that the Belmont here is just unprecedented. We don't know. There's going to be some things that we just don't expect that'll happen here. How bad will the gridlock be? Will there be craziness? Will there be crime? Will there be the bars just overflowing with problems? And I'm focusing on the negative. Will the economic impact be even higher than predicted? Let me hit a couple positive things. Will be a lot of good employment. But like for instance, when this was first announced for 2024, one of the local stores was interviewed by the one of the local TV stations and announced that they had $12,000 handbags in the store. And within a couple of days, that store got hit at 5 a.m. with two thugs that went in with a smash and grab and stole those bags. Like, didn't see that coming, right? So there's going to be some things, good and bad, that because it is so unprecedented here. Ironically, you mentioned Aqueduct. The Belmont was held at Aqueduct, historically many decades ago. I couldn't tell you when, but and that was a different time, a different era, right? 2024, like you said, that it had to be in Saratoga. Where else could you possibly have it other than Saratoga?
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Saratoga has become, an all-year destination. My wife's birthday is in the middle of January when it's normally freezing cold out, and you would normally be stuck inside. But every year we go out to dinner on Broadway or somewhere in Saratoga, and it's impossible to find parking. There's people walking around. The restaurants are packed, even in the dead of winter. So, yeah, there'll be an influx of people in town on a weekend or for a week that, would otherwise probably not see that many people. But, I think these local businesses, the bars, the restaurants, they handle it just fine for 2 months every summer. So, I think it'll be a positive for them. And, like anything for the first time, there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some growing pains. I feel like, the local businesses, even Naira, even, us local people that live in the area, we're going to learn a lot about just how this event is going to go for next year as we, work through it for, half a week or a week in the next couple of months. One sort of oddball thing that I keep thinking about, and other horse racing people will say that it'll never work, but I can't help but think that this Belmont at Saratoga in 2024 and in 2025 is not going to serve as some sort of test case for a potential Breeders' Cup up here at some point in the fall in the next, 5 to 10 years. I would be surprised if they at least don't make a push for it if all goes well over these next 2 years. But some people call me crazy for having that idea, but we'll see.
Well, we share that idea. Not only do we share it, I have a Facebook page called "Bring the Breeders' Cup to Saratoga."
Nice.
And maybe I've got I don't know, maybe 200 followers on the page. I've had it for 6-8 years. I think I wrote a op-ed for the TU Times Union 6 or 8 years ago. I'll have to send it to you. There's a lot of hurdles with that, right? Number one being the weather. But it's funny, every time Breeders' Cup, I won't say every time, but more often than not, we have really nice mid-fall weather on the days that they're out in California, 58 degrees, 62 degrees. Some days we've certainly had some cold early November weather. The other problem is the timing, right, within the day, the lighting and so forth. It seems like the networks want the prime time. But that being football season and stuff, I think they could have a great Breeders' Cup during the day. I think, just like people are coming here for the Belmont, people will come here. If it's 41 degrees and raining, people will put on the rain gear and they'll get out there because it's Saratoga. So you and I have to talk about that more because we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
Please join. Folks, please, I'm going to give myself a plug. Bring the Breeders' Cup to Saratoga on Facebook. Search it and like it or follow it. So good for you. Hey, let's shift here because again, what caused the Belmont to come to Saratoga was the ongoing significant construction of the Belmont Racecourse or Belmont Park. And they're knocking down the grandstand, building a new, smaller, more modern one. And you and I talked briefly before this. What does this mean? What does that mean for Belmont, and what does that mean for Aqueduct? You want to go ahead on that?
Yeah, so I was down there a couple of weeks ago, working on some video projects for Pastthewire and Pastthewire TV, their YouTube channel. So I was at the Belmont training track, and if you've ever been there, you can look across and you see the gigantic clubhouse building, the gigantic grandstand building, and just kind of driving around through there, you see just massive amounts of construction. And I think the point where they're at right now is they're installing the tunnel to get from the front side into the infield, which based on some of the plans that I've heard about, they're going to be opening up the infield to fans and to just have that be an additional sort of seating area or area for the customers to kind of hang out and relax and watch the races. In addition to that, like you said, they're going to tear down the building and reconstruct it to make it smaller. And when I spoke to some NYRA officials for a story probably 9 months ago or so, the idea was that the building is just too big. The place is gigantic. And for really one big day a year there, it just doesn't make sense to have such a large building. And we've kind of seen over the last, several decades just how horse racing has evolved, or, depending on your perspective, just not evolved. But I feel like this is more towards the positive end of that evolution of horse racing. They're going to tear down the building. They're going to make it a lot more smaller, a lot more intimate. And it just kind of reflects the nature of horse betting, sports betting in general. Everything's online, right? We can order DoorDash or Uber Eats and get our food delivered to us in an hour or less. Amazon, buy anything you want on the internet and it's on your door within 24 hours. People aren't going to racetracks anymore, right? I think a lot of the casual people might be blinded by the Kentucky Derby or the Preakness even, or the Belmont Stakes of old when there was, 120, 150,000 people there. The Derby is its own sort of thing, but everyday horse players, everyday fans of the sport are not going to the racetracks, and that's fine. They're betting online. We don't need these massive buildings anymore. And I think what NYRA is doing is going to reflect that evolution of horse racing, at least from the customer standpoint and who is coming to the track. The renderings that I saw a couple of weeks ago look pretty cool, like a nice, awesome, modern facility. And of course, people don't like change. So when you see something like this, you have a ton of memories at the old Belmont Park, and you get a little nostalgic and upset that things are changing. But it's hard for me. Well, I guess it's easy for me to say as a younger person, you don't need to be so nostalgic about it. I mean, I've got plenty of memories at Belmont Park. So maybe it's easy for me to say as a younger person, but if you're going to argue that, we don't like to see things change, but you also haven't gone to the track in, 10 or 15 years, or you go once a year, well, that's why things are changing. And, based on the last sort of construction update I saw, they're looking at completing it around 2026, in time, I think, hopefully to host the Belmont Stakes there. So that would be, spring of 26. As we all know, anytime, construction projects and Especially in New York, it seems like everything kind of takes a little bit longer. So fingers crossed on that. But if I had to guess, it'd probably be a little bit later than that, if I had to say.
What we can assume is once the new Belmont Park is completed, the Breeders' Cup will appear there very soon after, right? That is pretty much a foregone conclusion, even though it's not concrete yet. I think everyone agrees. The Breeders' Cup has not been in New York State, I think, since 2005, if my memory serves me. And
Yeah.
so that'll be 20 some years, 20 years plus. It's time, right? It's time, and why not showcase the new building and the new track, and then more than just a building. A quick question for you, and I don't know this: the USB Arena, how has that affected positively or negatively attendance at Belmont? Have they been able to feed off that in any way?
Well, there was really only like a year and a half where both were open at the same time, and most of the hockey games are at night, so there's no night racing at Belmont. So I don't think the season's necessarily aligned enough to have that sort of walk across the parking lot. But without Aqueduct in the picture, and in a couple of years, and really racing at Belmont all year round, except for when they come up here to Saratoga, I do think that they'll have that ability to bring people from one venue to the other. Again, like I said, I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and there's a lot of business going on around the arena. There's commercial space that's full. So I think that is also part of the entire plan to just make that a world-class sort of sporting destination. The USB Arena it looks beautiful from the outside. A lot of stuff happening on the ground level there with different restaurants and whatnot. So I have to imagine that's part of the plan once Belmont is finished, is to kind of have those two sort of play off of each other, and hopefully work hand in hand to bridge that gap between the two, for sure.
And you touched on something here. Let's delve into that. With Aqueduct, the future of Aqueduct, the closing of Aqueduct, we'll call it. It's not an if, but when question, correct?
Yeah, certainly. And I believe the plan, last I heard, is they're going to develop the land. Probably put up some housing units. Again, it's like they're going to put it out to a bid and see who can provide the best bang for the buck for the state, really. I believe that whole land was valued north of $1 billion. So I always kind of jokingly said over the last couple of years, it's a problem for horse racing when the land that your track is on is worth more as something other than a gambling facility.
Right.
And you look around, it seems like that's the case everywhere. Aqueduct's worth more as an apartment building than it is as a racetrack. You could argue
Suffolk, Arlington, Hollywood.
Exactly.
Golden Gate, isn't Golden Gate near the end?
Yep, exactly. So it's a problem for the industry. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm pretty sure in the next 10 years or maybe even less, Aqueduct will be its own new community with housing and retail and all that. But yeah, once Belmont opens back up in 2026, that'll be the end for Aqueduct.
And let's face it, we love the sport, but probably rightfully so. It's 11 miles or whatever, very close to Belmont. There's no need in 2025 to have two racetracks when the land is that much more valuable and housing is at such a premium. So I get it. I'm guessing you get it. That's the sport is evolving. So, well, listen, you and I had more things to talk. Let's do this again because we wanted to talk about Saratoga Racecourse upgrades and so forth. I think we should, if you want to save that, if you can come back in maybe
Yeah.
2 weeks and we can talk again. I enjoyed this. And anything else, because you're writing about illegal gambling and you're doing some videography. Anything else that you want to mention that's going on in the horse racing industry or the greater gambling industry?
Yeah, I think in the overall sort of horse racing landscape, like you said, Golden Gate Fields in Northern California, seems like their days are numbered. Big conversation happening in California today about offering up some race dates for some of the racetracks on that California fair circuit. And I know Santa Anita said if the California Horse Racing Board gives those dates to the fair circuit in Northern California, that they're going to have to cut purses and whatever else, cut purses even more than they already have. So that's happening later this afternoon. So something to definitely watch in California is just the health of the overall sort of racing ecosystem in California seems to be struggling. And that'll be sort of a key decision later today that could have some pretty big ripple effects throughout the industry there. I know in Maryland, there's legislation happening right now. They're talking about it that would see the Stronach Group, who owns First Racing and the Maryland Jockey Club, which owns both of the tracks there. They own the Preakness, they own Gulfstream, they own Santa Anita. There's legislation in Maryland that would see the Stronach Group give the state Pimlico and allow them to manage day-to-day racing operations and would effectively see the Stronach Group exit Maryland racing. Seems to be a lot of support for that legislation. So we'll see as that works its way through the legislature. I know they got to make a decision on that and vote here in the next couple of weeks as they're running out of time in their legislative session. But yeah, two big things happening on opposite coasts, in addition to what we discussed here in New York. So depending on how you want to look at it, either positively or negatively, certainly a lot going on in the thoroughbred racing world that could have some pretty sizable impacts on the industry across the country here in the next couple of weeks and couple of months for sure.
And real quick, halfway in between, I'm hearing news you don't hear too often in the horse racing industry, the possibility of a new track near Austin, Texas. Have you caught that?
Yeah, so I was reading about that the other day. They said, if anything, it wouldn't be until like 2030. I don't know. It just seems like a far-fetched idea, like we were just talking about. It doesn't make sense to have two tracks so close to each other. There's a couple of tracks already in Texas. They've got that whole sort of, for lack of a better term or phrase, they've got a whole sort of pissing match going on with HISA, and the
Right.
Texas Racing is not distributing its racing signal outside of Texas. And so it just seems silly. Like, I feel like that's got to resolve itself at some point first before you can even think about opening up a new track. There, what I was reading, they're struggling to find, reasonably priced real estate. I don't know. I'm not a believer in that, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, good. Let's do this again. Jim Gazzale of the Legal Sports Report and Pastthewire.com. Jim, thanks for joining us. We're going to do this again, and I thanks for the information you brought to us, folks. Jim writes a lot about New York racing on the Legal Sports Report. He covers a lot of topics, but certainly New York racing included. So, Jim, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, take care.